I'll go ahead and start the YouTube, and then I'll start the recording as soon as that's on, and then uh, it's all yours.
And how will I know you're starting that? You'll just tell me.
I'll just tell you.
Thanks.
That's
There you
easy.
go.
Yeah, he's great.
Thanks. All right, you're all set.
Great. So good evening. My name is Sherry Schwartz, and I am the president of One Montville. The mission of One Montville is to create and promote a climate of acceptance, inclusion, and kindness, which teaches and celebrates respect for one another by embracing and being enriched by the diversity that comprises the Montville Township community. The mission can only be fully accomplished through the involvement and commitment of community leaders, religious leaders, business leaders, and residents of all ages, races, religions, ethnicities, abilities, gender identity, or sexual orientation. This evening, One Montville has partnered with the Pinebrook Jewish Center and Chabad of Montville to hear Toby Levy tell her personal narrative of strength and resiliency. During this presentation, you will have the opportunity to submit questions through the Q&A box, which you'll see on the bottom, and these questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Toby Levy was born in Poland in 1933 and grew up in an Orthodox family. In the spring of 1941, the Germans invaded Soviet-occupied Poland, forcing Jews into ghettos a few months later. In the fall of 1942, Toby's family went into hiding. A Polish woman who had been a customer in her father's fabric store took them in, where they remained hidden in a 4-foot by 5-foot makeshift room in a barn with 9 people until June of 1944, when they were liberated by the Red Army. Her family came to the United States in 1949. Toby, we are honored to have you speak with us this evening. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for having me and wanting to hear.
Sure.
Because you are young and you have young children, and I count on you to teach, to tell them. This is the only way you can stop anti-Semitism, in my opinion. Parents get involved with their children. Anyway, you started off nicely. So I'm going to go back to a couple of minutes only for prior to the war, because I really don't remember much. My time when I was born, my family was already okay. My father was a soldier in the First World War, and he was a soldier for the German army, 1914. He was 18 years old. When the war ended and he came back, it was terrible, terrible inflation. It was a terrible time for all of the occupied countries that occupied Poland and Germany and Ukraine, all of it. So he used to say you needed a sack full of material to buy bread. But the next day you needed more. Why? Because there was no inflation, there was no money, there was no work, and the winning armies wanted reparations from Germans. To make the story very complicated, life was very bad. So in my mind, the reason I'm telling these things is because history teaches us what mistakes we made. So they should have known that it's going to be another war because time is bad. So when Hitler came to power in 1933, to power, not war. That's the year I was born. Right away, he started off in Germany with the German Jews. 1935 already, the German Jews, what's going on that you can and cannot do. Slowly, slowly, slowly. But my parents in Eastern Europe did not know. Okay, you have to remember there was no communication like you have today. No texting, no phoning, no Zooming, no FaceTime, nothing. Only when people came back and told us what's happening in Germany. But the Polish Jews, first of all, they thought, well, it's happening there, not here. The reason I want to tell you these things because we have to remember history. It's happening there. I'm just go back for 1 minute. Remember when it happened in Pittsburgh when they attacked the synagogue? That was in Pittsburgh. I don't know. The New Yorker Jews didn't get too excited. They kept quiet. They didn't show the riots. They didn't show the, oh, what's happening? The man strictly said loud and clear, he's killing Jews. The same thing happened then. We in Poland didn't connect the dots that we are next because we are Jews. It doesn't matter if your grandparents, great-great-great-grandparents converted. It doesn't matter. You are Jews halfway or whatever. Everyone who was a Jew knew what to wait for him. At the end, of course, we all paid the same price because, so in 1939, so I don't know much about anti-Semitism before the war because the town was small and it was okay. All the Jews lived next to each other to the synagogue. I called it Jews made their own ghetto because we stayed next to each other, which was convenient. Came a holiday, family lived together. Makes sense. So to me, this didn't mean much. So I cannot talk much about anti-Semitism before the war. But my parents knew plenty to tell me later on. And don't forget, my parents lived till 94 and 93, so I had plenty of time to talk to them. 1939, Germany divides Europe, makes a pact with the Russians, divides Europe in half. I'm occupied from the Russians. My husband, on the other hand, was occupied from the Germans from 1939 on. When the Germans walked into their town, they took the young men, boys, and the fathers right away to labor camps. So many Jews, there was the border of my part of border with the Germans, were able to run away to our part, and they told us what's happening in that part of Germany. Still nobody made plans to run. You know, I never forgave my father, always talked about it. How could you not have understood what's happening next door is not, you think by you it's going to be better? But somehow the leadership, I remember sitting in our house and talking and not discussing the depth of it, what's awaiting us. The leadership explained that we never had any such experiences. We had experiences of pogroms, which I'm sure you know what it means, but nothing like what Germany had in mind. So when the Jews ran away from the German part and told us, so life continues because we were by the Russians. By the Russians, they didn't touch us. So my father was a merchant, so he figured, he was afraid the Russians will call him bourgeois rich man. So what did he do? He took all his material and hid it. So we weren't rich, we weren't poor, we weren't rich, we had no money. We lived in my paternal grandfather's house, which was 2 floors. All his children lived there. His brother, his sisters, we all lived in the same building. We had 2 rooms, that's it. We were 2 children only. I had an older sister, 4.5 years older than I. Her name was Betty. And my mom helped my father. So life went on while what's happening in Germany, somehow the Jews didn't add it. Till today, I'm amazed how we didn't understand. But I'm not amazed now because I see now. Anyway, 1939, 41, Germany attacks the Russians and everybody starts running. My town had a train, a sugar factory, and a lumber yard. So it was a small town, but very vibrant. The Jews lived all together, probably had with the vicinity, all the Jews, maybe 5,000, that's about all. But we were very close to Lvov, which is a huge city, beautiful city. And they had, I would say, maybe 20,000 of Jews. It was a beautiful, vibrant city. Absolutely beautiful city. So when the Germans started running towards us, which we were much more to the east, we had a train, but the Russians got on the train, and single men or women who were able to get on that train was able to. My father did try to get on the train, the 4 of us, but he left the whole family. He says, let's run. couldn't get on the train. What does he do? He rents a horse and buggy. There were no cars, okay? No cars. Horse and buggy, and we start running. We're running, but the Germans are running faster because nobody's stopping to fight with them. So they're going from town to town and occupying them. The Russians are busy running back to Russia. We can't get on the train, no way. So my father turns to my mom and says to her, we can't get on the train. We're in a town that no one knows us. I think we're better off going back to our town where everybody knows us. I'm mentioning so clearly because already in his mind, he was thinking he's going to need help from outside. So he says, so let's go back. We're better off going back. We can't get into deep Russia. This is obvious. We can't get on the train. We come home. Sure enough, right away, maybe a day or two later, the Germans walk in. This is where I remember. The Germans walked in. Each city in the small towns, in European towns, have a square. That's called a marketplace. In Polish, it's called a rynek, a marketplace. So the minute the Germans walk in, they ask all the Jews to come outside. We came out, my father's holding me, my sister, we all come out in the center of town. And I, since I'm so short, I was, nothing, 7, 8 years old, I'm only seeing the boots, the elegant boots. I'm very at awe with those boots. And the soldiers are dressed so neat, yeah, nice, young. They didn't look tired, but they're screaming at us. They're not talking like occupiers talk to people. They were screaming, yelling at us. From now on, you're no longer citizens. You have no rights. Whatever you do is ours. Everybody goes to work, and whatever you have is finished. We can't go out. We can't go in. Everybody has to wear an armband. This overnight, this shock. You have to wear an armband, white armband. You have to make it yourself with a blue in the center. Every time I talk about it, I feel that shock in my parents. And they scream, what else do they do, which they did every place they occupied? They give you an example. They're humanizing you. They take one man that had a small little beard, not a big one, a young man, pushing him on his hands and feet, and the German puts his foot on his shoulder and says to us, this is who you are now. Look at them. Look at this. This is you. Finished. No more life. We come upstairs. My father turns to my mom and says, this is not the same Germans that we knew. None of us are going to make it unless we get help from outside. There was no help from outside. My father was lucky. He got a job. His job was to work in the lumber yard. Why was he lucky? Because not only slave labor Jews worked there, but the Poles and Ukrainians worked there. This was their job. My mom had to report every day to the Gestapo, whatever they send her. Sometimes I used to go with my mom to work when she knew where she's going. Otherwise, my father said, you children are going to stay home. You're not going in the street. Since I had an older sister, she was 4.5 years older, so she was old enough to take care of me, not to go out. So we can look out the window. The reason he didn't want us to go out, because we have to wear an armband. I don't look Jewish. I spoke a perfect Polish. Polish was my mother tongue. That's the only language I knew. But if I go on the street, the German doesn't know I'm Jewish. I have a chance to go free. But the Pole or the Ukraine that lives there, that passes by, knows me, will say to the German, she is Jewish and not wearing the armband. So I had no chance either way. So my father decided that we stay home, and we did. Only once do I remember a horrible thing. I was looking out the window, and this little girl sitting on the stoop and crying. Parents must have gone to work, and she was able to get out. A German soldier officer passes by, picks up the little girl on the left hand, takes a pistol and shoots her, and she falls down. My sister and I started shaking. We did get petrified from fear. We sat down on the floor waiting for our parents. When my parents came home from work, we told them what happened. My father did not bother to explain. All he said to us, from now on, kids, don't look out the window. You sit underneath the table. We got the message very clear. We can't, you know what? As young as I was, I understood, looking at my parents, understood he can't help me. I can't ask for anything. That was understood by every child. My father was lucky. Of course, we're all lucky because I'm very lucky and grateful that I'm here and able to tell the story and live a life and make a life. Was lucky because he was well liked by the Jews and by the non-Jews. So when he worked in the lumber yard, one of his guys that knew Moshe all his life because he had a store that used to shop by him, came over to him, says to him, my father's name was Moshe. Moshe Eisenstein. Moshe, he said to him, it's going to be a big aktia. You better find a good hiding place, not just behind the door on the roof. This is serious. My father comes home and tells my mother, and he's thinking, and he makes his own, he was brilliant in my father. He was thinking where to hide. In Europe, every house has a cellar, not a basement like here, a cellar that you go into it from the street, and it's a full floor down. It's cold there. You keep frozen things there, you keep fresh things, it's a storage, don't forget, we didn't have refrigerators either, okay? So that maybe gives you an idea. So he in his mind, he said he's going to make this cellar smaller, and his sister lives on the main floor. Her apartment, he figured out, would be a perfect under her apartment. From her apartment, we would go in. So he made a new wall. You want to ask me where he took the material to build? He worked in a lumber yard. So he would still the bricks and the mortar, whatever else he needed to build that wall. He covered it up. To get into the hiding place would be from his sister's house underneath the stove. The stove, he would cut out, the walls were thick. The European walls are thick, not thin here. But he cut out enough for a person to roll into the cellar. But he realized the cellar was a full flight. So if we fall all the way down, we'll get hurt. So he made a platform from wood, put bedding on top of the platform. So I'm trying to tell you this because I'm always amazed at it. He probably had no more than 4 grades because he was 18 when he went into the army in Europe. But he was a genius in my mind, how he was able to figure out everything to work. To get into the hiding place was from his sister's apartment, and he cut out a brick, and then this brick had a little string, and when we were in, we pulled it down and we were in. Sure enough, a couple of weeks later, the same guy comes to my father, says, you have a hiding place because it's going to be this weekend. Okay, so we had time. So we went into the hiding place Friday night, but that's usually they would do it on a Saturday, the killings or whatever. So sure enough, Saturday morning, we hear knocking the Germans with their voices with the door open, and screaming, everybody out, out, out. My paternal grandfather was living with my aunt in the apartment that we went into hiding with, but he did not want to go with us. He says, I'd rather die now than see you killed. Sure enough, when they come into the apartment and they tell him to come, he says, no, I don't want to go. No problem. They shot him, and we heard it. We heard it. My father knew when his father was killed. Very, very late, and we thought maybe we'd finish. The day was so long. So my aunt was there, my father's sister, with 3 children, 2 boys and an infant baby girl. So she took along a pillow in case she has to put on the baby to keep her quiet. Very, very late in the afternoon, the cellar door opens up. I was not the youngest, but maybe too far away from my mom. All I said is very, very quietly, just like that, but less than that even. My mom grabbed my hand, but they heard a noise. They started going up with the flashlight down the stairs. My aunt put a pillow on the infant, and none of us were breathing because we realized they're coming down. As they're coming down, a cat is there in the cellar and jumps out in the middle with a big meow. And the Germans started laughing. Oh, it's on eine Katze. And they're turning around and walking out. And we heard it all. We knew we made it. We were afraid to get out of this hiding place a few days because we didn't know when it's finished. My aunt, my mom's sister, came looking for us. She knew we someplace there. We came out. Right after that, the German used language of deception. At that point already, my father's family was all gone. After that, they picked up people, put them on the train and just took him. My father's family was all gone. My mother still had her sister. She still had her mother and two sons, one sister, brother, and two brothers. One was married and one was single, was still alive. My father's work in the lumber yard, and he hears rumors that the Germans say they're going to relocate the remainder Jews into the Lvov big ghetto, which makes sense. It was so few left. My father comes home and tells my mother what he heard today, but he says to her, I don't believe them. That to me is the best word, because he was the only one that tells me he had the common sense. Okay, let's assume everybody understood. There was no place to go. There was no help from anybody. Left, right, south, north, south, east, west, anyone, no one. There was no help. So you were on your own. If you were on your own, it didn't matter if you went with them or didn't go with them. So if people say the Jews went like sheep, it's not true. They just had no choice. It's you said you don't want to go now, so they shoot you now. But life is very dear, and everybody thinks maybe tomorrow I have a better chance. And they follow their rules, not because you followed because you wanted, you followed because you had no choice. It's either die now or tomorrow. So, but my father says, what is it? So my mom says, what's going to be your choice? Because there was no choice. You don't believe them. He says, I'm not going, I don't believe. What are you going to do? He says, I'm going to think about it. Thinks about it, comes back and says, I'm going to look someone to hide us. My mom's sister was still alive with two younger children and her family. And the two brothers said, no, they're going to Lvov. My aunt and uncle with two younger children said to my father, my aunt, Rivka, her name was Rivka, says to my father, I'll go with you. I'll look too. Maybe together we'll find somebody. They did. They went and they found a woman. Her name was Stephanie Struck. Her husband was the conductor on the train that took the Russians to Russia. So she had no husband, but she had two children. She lived in center town. She didn't do it for money. I have to make sure that you understand, because we did not have any money. The only thing my father had was the material that he saved when he closed the store. So when she says, I'll take you, how many will you be? So we said we're going to be 9. It was supposed to be 10, but one didn't make it, so we're 9. So where are you going to hide? So my father's, she lived in central town. Every house in Europe has, even if it's in center town, has a garden in the back and then a barn. You know what a barn looks like. This was not a big one. So my father said, we'll make the barn a little bit smaller, I'll build a wall. So we're going to be 9 people. So it was 4 feet by 4 feet, 5 people this way and 4 people this way. Head to toe. If one wants to at night to turn, all 9 of us have to turn. And 4 children. We were 5 adults and 4 children. So he finishes building the wall, us women going in earlier. The 2 men are still working because they're afraid they shouldn't be suspicious. So my father gives her 1 sack of material, and he says to her, here's money to buy food and buy livestock. That will give you an excuse to come into the barn and put them in the barn. So she buys a pig and chicken, puts them in the left corner and we in the right corner. We have this wall, which is small, but it's okay. So the women and children, we went in hiding earlier because she had to bring us every night 1 because it was curfew, but she was able to go out. And the 2 men were still going to work, but they worked till the very last minute, till the Germans started picking up the people that were supposed to go to Lvov. But shows you an instinct from inside instinct. They somehow all of a sudden realized that this is all a lie because everybody was running like a mouse in different directions to save their life. My father and uncle barely made it to our hiding place. And the rest, they made it and they closed the door. She comes in 2 weeks, Stephanie comes in to tell us 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, she comes, tells us there wasn't a single Jew left in Chodorov. Everybody was picked up on a train except sit still. Of course, we're sitting still. There's not much we can do. She brought, so the food was, whatever she was able to buy was potato and bread that for the pigs. This way was not a problem. Food was hard because to feed 9 people, and that's not an easy job. We understood that part. So whatever she was able to bring, we were very content. We didn't complain. We couldn't complain. Maybe 3 months into the hiding place, three adults are standing in their pajamas and stretching their legs. And the big barn door opens up. Stephanie's standing there with the Ukrainian police right here on the right side. This is a picture that I lived. This is a picture that stays with me forever. And I think I'm going to take it with me when I'm gone, bury it with me. When she opens that door, inside is pitch dark. She knew she has some people in the barn. The Ukraine police didn't know. So she froze when she sees us standing there. The pig and chicken, since she opened the door and the sun came in, it's very sunny outside, pitch dark inside, the pig and chicken start running towards the door. So he is not looking at us. He doesn't see us. He got blinded. That's for sure. You want to call it a miracle, you want to call it whatever you want it. I call it a miracle. He did not see us. The pig and chicken start running towards him. So he's looking at the pig and chicken. She's staying like this for I don't know for how, might have been no more than minutes, but to us it was years. She finally closes the door, goes away. They all go away. And we know that he didn't see us. Otherwise he would have picked us up. But we know that it's going to be a problem. We're sitting quietly and waiting. And sure enough, she comes back a half an hour later and says to us, I'm sorry, you have to leave. He saw you, I'm scared, you have to go. My father is telling her no. He begs her to go speak to him. She says, no, my children don't know about you. You must go, I don't want you here. We can't force her. I know I can't help it, we have to go. So she gives us 2 nights. I'm leaving the barn open. You have 2 nights to get out. So my mom and my aunt, they dress like babushkas. They go out in the neighborhood to people that they knew all their lives, and nobody opens up a door. They come back and they're afraid to go out again. So the decision is we all going to try to run to the forest. There is a forest. We're in center of town, so we have to pass the other half of town at night. Of course, we'll go. And then there's a little lake, but you can cross it. And then there's a big field that you can have to walk. Then there's a forest. You could make it there. In fact, young people, a bunch of young 5, 6 people, they had 2 hiding places in the forest. one was discovered and one survived. So you could make it. You steal, you hide during the day, and at night you go looking for food. But you have to be young. Anyway, we're getting dressed to go. As we're getting dressed to go, my father says to my mom, I think Betty, I had an older sister. I was 8 at the time. She was 12, 12 and a half. So he says to my mom, I think Betty is old enough that we can trust her what I want her to do. He gives her 2, 3 addresses, 3 I think it was, to Polish people that he knows them well. And he says, I know they will take you in. But he says, to remember, I know the war will end, but I don't know when. But I also know there are going to be survivors looking for others. I know it will. So if we don't, we're going to the forest. If we don't come back and the war ends, so here was 2 addresses. He had family. My father had a brother in Palestine at the time, and my mom had a sister. How did they get there? 1937, they belonged to the Zionist organization, and they had a visa to go to Palestine. So I had an aunt and an uncle there. And then he says to my sister, and we have cousins in the United States. He gives her all the addresses. He says, when the war ends, if we don't come back, you two reach these people and go there and whatever. As we are saying, my aunt and uncle could not do that with their children because the younger one was 4, the next one was 8. 4, 8, 4, 6, and I was 8, my sister was 12. Stephanie realizes that we're leaving, and she was sent from God, in my opinion, because she was way above human to do what she was doing. You know, we never called her by the name Stephanie. We called her the Prize. Prize means queen, the queen. We never called her by her name. She was our savior. She was it. We relied on her. So she, meanwhile, realizes that we're leaving, and she does not have the heart to chase us, because she does go back to the Ukraine police and says to him, listen, you know who I am. I'm Mrs. So-and-so. You know my parents. You know my sister. My sister had a bakery. She tells him, he says, of course I know you. You know where my husband is. The Russians took him. He says, yes, what do you want? Why did you come to my house? What were you looking for? He says to her very clearly, you bought livestock. My job is to register it. I came to register. She talks again and again and again, and he gives her the same answer. She comes out of his house, and she realized he did not see us. It's a miracle, of course it is. Scientifically, you can say the sun, whatever you want to say. I have my song. She comes back, and she knows she'll be leaving. She has 2 children, a 19-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old son. 16. She comes home, and she takes the 2 children, and she tells them who she has in the barn for 3 months, and that we're leaving because what happened in the afternoon. And the 16-year-old son turns to his mom. His name was Tajik. You can't chase him. They're never going to make it. I will help you. Maybe together we can save him. That's exactly what he said. How do I know? Because she came and told us the next day. But Tajik opens that door. She said no, and he said yes, but of course he won. And he says to his sister, you are 19. You socializing with the Germans. You stay out. It's mom and I. She walked away. Mom and I. I will never forget. We're standing there, dressed to leave. This little boy, not big, not husky, skinny, opens up the door and says, my name is Tajik. You're not going any place. This hiding place is not good enough. I'll make a better one. And we went to the attic, made it bigger. So we were able to sit. The children were able to stand, adults sit, and sleeping. Each one had a space for itself. A barn is made out of wooden panels. So in the center panel, what did he do? He cut out the inside, so us 4 children should be able to watch that window. That's where we spent 2 years. We had mice, lice, rats, no food, quarrels between each other. It's normal. My father was always orthodox. And you know what he took in hiding with him? The material and the talit and the tefillin. The talit and tefillin. And that he put on every morning. Excuse me 1 minute. Every morning he put it on. He had a calendar written, handwritten. Too bad that I didn't take all the things from hiding place. Too bad. We didn't think long term. We should think, young people, talk to your parents now and write it down, because later it's too late. Can't do anything now. And he had the holidays. So every holiday he would teach us children. So my father taught me to the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, and the multiplication table. In case we make it, I should know it. And of course, the main issue was to teach him not to hate. He used to say, if you hate, hate will kill you, not the person you hate. And he told us a story about Purim, every time a holiday came, he knew the holiday. He tried to give us the most, and when I asked him why, what did you do wrong? Why do they hate you so much? He used to say, I don't know, but if we make it and you get educated and you grow up, maybe you'll figure it out by then and you'll be able to tell the world. And every day he used to say, we made it today, a day. He didn't count on 2 days nor a day. A miracle is today. We learned not to sneeze, not to cough, not to laugh, not to cry. We learned, I don't know how, but it's possible because the desire to live is very great. So I guess you can do anything under any circumstances. Of course, food, the main subject was food. Hungry, we were very hungry. We had 2 pails for waste. One was for water, maybe one for waste. 2 pails, I remember. And if we needed to bring him, so we would bring him down. Tajik would empty, bring him back up, give us 2 rings. The main thing was food. Then one day she comes over and says to my father, I have no more money to buy food. The material he gave me is out. I don't have any money. My parents, none of us had any gold or money, but my father took with him 1 full sack of material. He said for an emergency. This was an emergency. He gave her a piece of material and she says to him, she answers him, I thought you told me you gave me everything. He says to her, I saved some for an emergency. Here it is. So she knew he has more. Every time she sold this, she sold a piece of material, she got money, she was able to get the bread. I'll never forget, we didn't have bread for a very long time. So she brings up this 1, maybe 2 pounder round bread for 9 people. All of us are staring at it. So 9 people. So my father says, first slice I'll give to the grandma, and then I'll give you half and we'll have. My uncle turns to my father and says, no. She's not my mother. She's my wife's mother, whatever. I want my half. You do what you want with yours. My father didn't fight, gave him his half of bread. Then from my father's side, the reason I'm telling these little things, because this is what made me who I am, what kind of person I grew up, and what kind of person my parents were. So the first slice from my father's half, he cuts off the slice, he gives it to my grandma. The second slice, he gives it to my mom. Then he gives me my sister, and then he takes for himself. But his half, he still cuts in half and shares it with us. So this is where I learned to be a human being. Not only, this is only one example. In the 2 years, I have that many examples, which I'm not going to get involved. But every single day was a miracle. But Tajik watched that barn for 24 hours. One time when his friends were taking a step ladder, climbing up against the wall. They wanted to play, whatever they wanted to do. Tajik got scared. If they go with the step ladder and put their face against the barn, they would see movement. We got scared too. We lay down flat. What did Tajik do? He grabbed the step ladder out of this friend. He says to him, "Why do you want to climb? You think I have Jews there? Come, I'll show you." Open the door. He dared them. Tajik dared them. That's why we're here. Once my uncle wanted to know what time in the middle of the night with a flashlight looks at the clock, at the watch. Of course, it's wartime, is right, full of German running around. Tajik is with his flashlight out there. Many, many incidents like this. I'm not going to go more into details because I want to continue. 1944, we were liberated by the Russians. The last 2-3 weeks she wasn't there. She had to run because the bombing was very bad. But we had every single house around her lost the roof. Hers was standing and the barn was standing. To me, that's another miracle. Anyway, when the Russians walked in, none of us could walk. We was the last few weeks had no food at all. When we crawled out and we looked at each other and we didn't believe, and we're looking at the Russian soldiers, and they said to us, "Yes, yes, it's us." And we didn't look like we're going to make it. We were so very hungry, so we asked them to give us food. So they said, "Don't eat. If you die, if you eat, you'll die." So we went to, they helped us put in the car. We took us to two separate people. We went to, my father knocked to one person, so they knew all their life, and my aunt went to another person. And this woman took us in. She was shocked we are alive. She took us in and gave us a bath. We didn't have a bath for 2 years, and gave us clean sheets and nursed us to health. Didn't take long. We were very anxious to get out to find out who else made. When we got out, 31 people survived in Khodrov. Nobody came back from any place. They were all in hiding by non-Jews. So we stayed till 1945 when the war ended. Just like my father predicted, when the war ended, other people, not survivors, but Jews from all, I don't know where they're from, they all spoke in Hebrew, looking for survivors, picking up. And this is a separate issue to tell a story how we got out of Ukraine, came over to the American zone, to the displaced persons camp. I wound up in, first I was in Bad Gastein in Austria, then we were changed to Abelsberg, which is close to Linz, Vienna, in the displaced camp, which is army barracks. Jews, survivors from all over Europe. You name it, and they were there. Each barrack, like my barrack was, for instance, barrack 5, so this was family, people that survived with their children. So all these people from 45 to 49, I made friends, and this, I have to say, this was the best time of my life, that time. Why? Because I had freedom to walk, to talk. We learned to talk, to laugh, to cry, to run. I learned the games I wanted to play. I never had games to play, but I wanted games. But at the time I got there, and by the time we right away had not teachers, adults, teach the children. The main thing, teach the children. Everybody was worried, you have to teach the children. So whoever knew something was, or we organized, and that's how we made schools. I'm still in touch with the same people as we were in those camps. So life was okay. 1949, all the doors opened, and we of course had an Israel. So all the camps closed up. So we decided the last minute, instead of going to Israel, my aunt and uncle talked my parents out of coming to Israel. So my father decides we're going to go to the United States. So the Jewish So the 4 years from 45 to 49, the Jewish agencies from America, the Joint and the Hayas, supported us, not the Germans. They supported us whatever we needed with food. Rent, there was no, we lived in army barracks, only thing is needed food. And we learned to sew, we learned to fix in packages from the United States. It was okay. It was, I can't complain. The best, I would say the best of my years was there. Eventually, we knew we were going to have to make a normal life. So we decided to go to the United States. So again, my father doesn't want to go where everybody else goes. He always goes different. He goes to the South. So we wound up on a General Black, an army ship, because it was only survivors. So all went to the South, which was Florida, Texas, but all docked in New Orleans. There, the Jewish agency, which is the Hayas, probably, or the Joint, a woman picked us up. We came to New Orleans in September, just a week, maybe less than a week before Rosh Hashanah. My father says to her, you know, but I have to tell you, the trip on the boat, on the Mississippi, was the most exciting in my life ever. It still is. On each that United States, the lights and the going down slowly the Mississippi and the cars and the people and the noise. I'm turning to my father. When I came to the United States, I was 16 and a half. I turned to my father and says, what the heck did you stay all your life in that godforsaken country? Why didn't you come here earlier? He says to me, we're here now. Let's make it here. Be content now. He was always content what he has. He never complained what he didn't have. Anyway, we getting picked up by this woman. She speaks a little Yiddish, and my father tells her he wants a kosher house and an Orthodox synagogue for the holidays, and she finds it for him. And so for the holidays to eat and then sleep over. And so I remember coming to this house on the holiday, Erev Yom Tov. You know, when we were together, all of us, the survivors, the 4 years, to us, we all looked normal to each other. When I came to this house, in New Orleans, to this beautiful home, Jewish home, the candle lighting, the food, and everything normal, I looked at my parents and me. Our eyes didn't look like theirs. We didn't look. I felt so awkward. I felt so down. I felt I wanted to bury myself. And then the man starts whatever bracha he made, and then he wants my father to say something. And my father says to him, wants to tell him, I don't know the details. All I remember is the man saying, stop. You're here now. Don't go back. Remember, but go forwards. We realized that the American Jews don't want to hear. And not only we felt that the people that came to New York felt the same, did not want to hear what happened. And that's what the survivors did. They remembered, but they went forward. And most survived, 99% survivors made it. They raised beautiful children. And I'm a volunteer now in the museum, and I talk to hundreds of thousands of children. And I'm at the United States, but we made a life. When did we start talking? Many, many years later, especially the little children, many years later. I will stop now because I think I took a lot of time. So I want more, but I have to stop. So I will stop. Okay?
Oh, Toby, you were great. Thank you.
I don't know how great, but I'm trying. Trying to relay a message that you should, what I try to teach children. Okay, ask questions, then you give me 5 minutes.
No, finish what you were gonna say.
I'm trying to relay messages when I speak to children. I remember I spoke to a class of high school kids, and she says to me, "Did you ever want revenge?" I reached thousands of children, and each of one of them I asked him to be my witness. And when she asked me, "Do you want to be revenge?" I answered her without thinking, "I have my revenge. I'm alive. I have Jewish children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. 3 great-grandchildren. What more can I ask for?" So then she answers me in a letter, "I never knew you can have revenge without killing." So I taught something, and many things like that. Like my father, I fulfilled my father's wish to find out why anti-Semitism is so big again today. So I can't start talking this except, go ahead.
Well, we definitely have a few questions.
Okay, if I have time, I'll talk more.
Okay. So I might mispronounce her name. Amber Kobilarczyk wanted to know, how did they know that who was Jewish if all the Jews lived together?
The Poles knew the Jews. They lived there. They knew us. That was the problem. Germany could not have accomplished all this by themselves so thoroughly. Each city they occupied, they had full 100% help. I shouldn't say 100 because I'm alive. That's not fair. I'm always remembering that. They were good people. The war people felt they should not be killed. Can you imagine a 16-year-old boy to feel that? To me, this tells me everything.
Yeah.
The Poles knew. The Poles knew. The Poles and Ukrainians knew who's a Jew, who's not, even though I don't look it and I speak the language. Didn't matter. They just knew.
They just knew. Some people wanted to know, how did you pass the time when you were hidden? Like, how did you just get through the day?
First of all, if you don't eat and you're hungry, you have nothing on your mind except food. That I can tell you, because I've had it on my. I'm 87 years old, and up till about recently, that's all I had on my mind is food. My house is packed with food. I can eat 4 weeks up to here, all the time, packed. So that's number. And next, my father would try to tell us stories, and my grandmother, she would give us old sweaters and we would rip it. So my grandmother was teaching me knitting and crocheting, and I told you I learned multiplication table. I learned the alphabet in Hebrew, the Hebrew ABC. I learned to read in Yiddish and to talk in Yiddish, to read and talk and write. 2 years you can learn a language. I learned Yiddish in hiding because I didn't speak before. And you were most of the time we were too tired to. Most of the time you were afraid because the barn door was open. In second year in hiding, she took German officers to live in her house. So most of the time you live in fear.
Got it. And Karen would like to know, how long did it take you to talk about your story and your experience?
I didn't talk till I came to the museum, which is only 7, 8 years ago. We talked between, whenever survivors meet, first question is, how did you make it? Where were you? Then when we establish this, then we can talk. We have to establish how you made it, where, which camp. Thank God I'm a very, very lucky person. I really am. I can't complain on anything. As hard as life is, I can't complain. My father taught me, don't want anything you don't have.
He was a good teacher, it sounds like.
Excellent, excellent. My sister and I and his grandchildren, he lived long enough to teach my children the same values, my son especially, my daughter, very good values. I'm trying to teach it to schools. Go ahead.
When you were talking about interacting with other survivors, we actually have a gentleman, George Mandelbaum, is watching tonight, and he says that he knows you. He lived in Manhattan Beach, Brooklyn, after the war, and I guess you guys are 3 years apart.
Where did he live? Okay, doesn't matter. I'm here a long time in the neighborhood. I'm here since 1953. Well,
we'll connect the two of you afterwards. All right. And let's see, we have a bunch more questions. Let's see. Rachel Davis wanted to ask if you have ever had any contact with the people that hid you after you were freed.
Sure. Oh, I'm glad you asked. I almost forgot. My parents always corresponded with him. Always. Told you, we called her the princess, the princess. But we had nothing to give her till we came to the United States. We came to the United States the first year, we still had nothing to give her. When we were able to give her, we asked her, what do you want? So she said, material. Because that in Europe is a big deal, it's money. So my parents shipped whatever she needed. When they passed away, I have a picture when she died. Stephanie died. I have a picture of her and Tajik and the daughter, and Stephanie, her daughter, standing by. So Tajik unfortunately died young. We think it was the Chernobyl explosion next because it's very close to Ukraine. We think so, but we're not sure. But I have one picture of him. So when my parents died, my sister died young too. She died of breast cancer. She was 64. I took over. So I took my other cousins from Israel, and we went back to Chodov. I said, I have to see it one more time. So I didn't know, did she tell her grandchildren or not, because she was afraid to tell everybody else. When we left, she was afraid we left the houses that we had, but we had to do it through court legally because we're afraid to give it to her. So when we came, I hired a guy because Chodov was destroyed completely and never rebuilt. I couldn't find, anyway, I said, I have to find her either daughter, son I knew was dead, the daughter or grandchildren. I found her great granddaughter, not daughter, granddaughter. I found her. So the guy finally says to her, there's 3 women from the United States want to meet you. She says to him, what took them so long? I was so happy. I was thrilled because then I knew I couldn't talk the language. She speaks Russian. I don't speak Russian, Ukraine. So that means the great grandma told her. So I made up with her. I will correspond with you and send you as long as I live. But as long as you tell your children what your great grandmother did during Second World War, she promised. And I keep my promise. She's my biggest charity. Oh. That's why I sent most of my money. If I have any money left, that's where it goes. I will never forget her. And I have her name, Stephanie and Tajik in Yad Vashem, Righteous Among the Nations.
Oh, that's lovely. What a beautiful relationship. Yeah, a lot of people ask questions about them.
Oh, sure. Are you kidding? Where do you find people like that?
Yeah.
Whatever we gave her was never enough, but we couldn't give her more.
Yeah. Hallie Goldsmith wanted to mention she teaches elementary school students and she's going to be sharing her story with them tomorrow. What's one piece of advice you could give them about navigating during difficult times?
Oh, very easy. First of all, you have to have hope. Hope. Without hope, you can't make anything. So when the virus broke now here, my grandkids were hysterical. I was a little bit shocked too. I said, not again, I have to stay home. But it's okay. Let me teach you one thing that you can do. You have to have hope. That's number one. You know what? When the first year in hiding, I have to go back 1 minute. First year in hiding, she didn't tell us anything how the war is progressing. Nothing. We knew nothing. Second year in hiding, she came to tell us, I see an opening, a light at the end of the tunnel. I'll never forget that. The Russians stopped the Germans in St. Petersburg. They're going backwards. We saw, you know how much easier it was the second year to stay and be hungry than the first year? The same thing here. When the virus broke out and my grandkids especially, overwhelmed with fear. Of course it's fear. Everybody, I'm afraid too. I didn't go anyplace. But I said to them, listen, darling, you've got your home, you have a roof, food's delivered, you can still deliver food, you can still go out and buy, you can still walk around the corner, nobody's coming to call for you. And remember, that virus is hitting everybody, not only Jews. To me, this is a very important one. It hits everybody. Everybody's equal. So we're all going to get the virus. So we all going to. But now that I already have the second vaccination, I'm going to see my son and the kids this week.
Yay!
I'm going to put a mask on. My son married late. He's got 2 little kids. He lives in the city. I'm going to put him. I have the second. So it shows you that you can. And how did I keep busy? Zoom. I learned the Zoom. Puzzles. I work puzzles. Reading a lot of books. I love reading. I was reading before you came. I was reading. Always reading.
That's great.
You can make it by definitely thinking positive. First of all, everybody's the same boat. So if I take good care, the other one takes care, the third one, the fourth one, I have a good chance of making it. Mm-hmm. That's the way I see it. And walking by yourself, no need company, by yourself is very good talking to yourself. You can tell yourself what to do and not to do.
Some good advice.
I think I gave a little bit. I gave you enough?
Yeah, well, we still have more questions,
okay.
But if you're...
I'm not going anyplace.
Okay, all right, we'll take a few more. Richard Lieberfarb wanted to know if your belief in God was impacted as a result of your experience.
My father never wavered. He brought us up the same way. My sister even became more religious than my father when she came here. I am not as much, I observe, but I'm not so, because I married my husband, he wasn't so, but my kids went to yeshiva 12 years. There was no question in my mind. They have to know who they are and what they are. And I think that has a lot to do with it, yes. Yeah. My father had believed. He says somebody has to make it. No way is God going to stand by. And if you told my father, this is your God, like my uncle might be used sometimes in hiding, he would say, this is because my father, he would say to him, this is your God, this is what God does to people. My father's answer was, I never forget, it's not God's will, this is humanity's will. God didn't, or God gave people choices. He says, Stephanie chose to save us. That was his answer all the time.
Two people wanted to know, where did your sister settle?
My sister settled in Muncie.
Okay.
Muncie, New York.
Gotcha. And we've had a few people ask about the effects of not eating and not bathing for so long. How did that affect you?
Well, the bathing doesn't affect you. Took a bath and I was fine. Okay. Eating affected, well, my sister and I had problems having children. And the doctor said right away to us when we went, I had 2, my sister had only 1 and she couldn't have anyone. Even I did 2, barely squeezed them out. And I was young when I got married. So he said the diet, your age, we were both the age that we needed to be nourished, the right balance. We didn't have a balance for how many years. Besides the 2 years in hiding, a year before we didn't have the food. And then the 4 years in the camps, we didn't have either the food. What we had, whatever the joint allowed us to take. So it was bread and whatever else. And it wasn't a diet that you considered. I told you when I came to New Orleans and saw the food, I didn't even know what it was or what it meant or what it looked like. I never saw these foods in my life.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
So, but I think basically, I don't think so. I think in the long run, if you watch your diet and you eat right, it's okay. In bathing, definitely, I don't think it's, you just don't, the body gets, I think the skin gets used to it. I think the skin gets used. I don't remember anything particular that when I took the bath that you should have affected me. How's that?
Oh, sounds good. Michelle Zuckerman would like to know how you began to share your story with your children and grandchildren. What was that like?
My children and grandchildren, my children was very, my husband was a survivor too. He never talked much. I started early on. Like if she wanted something or didn't have something, she says, well, you have it. I never had it in your age. I would compare her, tell them where I come from and what I saw. You should be happy. We have a car. Or we got a car. I got to drive a car. I was 35 when I got to drive a car, not before. So I'm slowly, but later on it was like, but never sitting down and telling a whole story, no. First of all, this children of hidden children, we kept quiet till late into the 90s, late into the 90s. Mm-hmm. But the survivors started talking a little bit earlier with the hidden children because we felt very fortunate. I had my parents. Mm-hmm. What could I ask for more? And my parents with me. I wasn't on my own. So it was slowly, but always repeating. Like we would eat Friday night, Shabbos meal. I said, you see, I can cut all I want bread. All I want chali. You can eat all you want. And they didn't want anything, but I eat. How can you not eat such delicious food? Food was always an issue.
A couple people, Alyssa Berkowitz and Allie Banks, wanted to hear more about how you met your husband. You mentioned he was a survivor as well.
Right. So I was in New Orleans, but most of my friends, 99%, came to New York, and it was much easier for them. But on the other hand, I don't have such a strong accent. You know why? My English I learned in New Orleans. Because in New Orleans, if you didn't pronounce it properly, you ain't getting it. I'll never forget my mom. I was a shopper. So with a dictionary, I went shopping. She wanted beets. I don't know what beets look like. I never knew what beets look like. So I had a dictionary and I'm shopping, going to this grocery. I'm looking for beets. I don't know what beets look. So I'm asking a guy who works there, could you give me beets? I have it written down. He says, what? I said, beets. He didn't like it the way I said it. I said, come here, take the dictionary. Oh, beets. So I said to him, would you please repeat it again so I can learn to do it? I was never shy to learn to do it right. I'm very lucky. I'm not embarrassed to ask. That's very important. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's why my accent is not as, all my friends New Yorkers have a much stronger accent than I have, because I learned my English in the South. So when I first came, I was 16 and a half, but I didn't know the language. So they put me in first grade. But I went to night school too. I went to night school and I went working also. The joint gave us 3 months. They paid for our rent 3 months, helped us buy what we needed, and then you're on your own. My father didn't make much, whatever. Everybody had to work. So I went to school during the day, and at night I went to night school to learn English. So within the year, I was able to graduate 8th grade. I was very proud of myself, and the school was proud of me. Yeah. There was only two children like me, and I was older than the other one. I was much younger. So when they graduated, so they wanted me to give the graduating class the speech. So what did I know how to speak? That was the first time I spoke though. My parents weren't involved, didn't help in every shape or form. I had to help them. So I make myself what to speak, but when I get to the beamer to speak, I look at these children. I says, what do these children know my pain? How can I talk to them? This is not for them. I tear the paper up, and what did I do? I thank them for helping me, to getting me there, and I tell them how to appreciate this country. It's a great country. I already knew it's great because I saw it. I can do what I want. I freedom. And I said, appreciate it, what you have. So going back to your question, so when my friends were all getting married in New York, so I didn't have any money, so went by Greyhound bus to New York to one of my best friends for the wedding. So I stayed with her, and I loved the atmosphere, the atmosphere of being us together, meeting. They used to meet once a week, all the reunion, and I didn't have this in New Orleans. I went back, so I met my husband then, but I went back to New Orleans to go back. I was going to high school. Then my husband came once, twice, and I came, and then we got married. We corresponded, and we got married. No, I knew a lot of guys. I was okay. I knew a lot of guys.
That's
He was
great.
very handsome. He was blue-eyed, blonde. He had a job. He was good.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, answer that question, but I gave you a lot of it though.
It was great. What a love
I
story.
give you more than one question.
Well, we have one final question. And Adam Marks wants to know, did you ever experience any anti-Semitism living in the US, and how did you handle it?
I didn't. I lived between Jews.
Okay.
I didn't. But I'm afraid. I'm afraid what's happening now. I'm afraid for my children. I'm very much afraid for anti-Semitism. I speak a lot about it. I'm scared. That's why that's when I speak to children, and I always say to them, I want you to go home and tell. So how did I, okay, you asked me a question before, I didn't answer it. How did I volunteer? So when my husband, I was a caregiver, my parents, my sister, I was a caregiver, and I worked full time. I worked with my husband. He had a jewelry. First, I worked in Coney Island Hospital. Then I worked with my husband in a jewelry line on 47th Street. He was a watchmaker. That's how he started a business. He was first in the neighborhood in Brighton. Then we moved away. So then after my parents died, my sister died, my husband had Parkinson's. So I took care of him. When he died, it was 82 or 83, I think. I still worked, but I said, now is my time to do what my father wanted me to do, to talk to kids. I looked, where can I find a place that I can volunteer? So I finally found a museum. Somebody recommended me, some of my friends recommended the museum. So I went there and I said, I'm willing to, but they didn't have a class. So they said to me, come back next year. So I gave them the name. So when they called me to follow, I was still working full time. So I said, one day a week, I'll give to the museum. I'll work only 4 days a week. The following year, they called me. So I was a docent and I loved it. So what did I do in my docent? So when it came to the big plaque where it says, everybody should go to the museum because it's really worthwhile to be, especially the exhibit that they have now, the Auschwitz exhibit. By the way, it's going to be open another couple of months. You have plenty of time to go. So when they have that big sign, the language that the Germans use, I always told the kids my story, how a 16-year-old boy saved my life. And evidently they might have heard me speak, and they asked me once to speak, and I says, I don't know how to speak. He said, just tell your story like you told them. And I did, and that's it. So, but when I tell kids, I do tell them all the time, you must discuss it with your parents. You must tell your parents. There's deniers now. Can you imagine if the survivors are gone? And every one of these kids, I ask to be a witness, like just what my father put it. I think I did plenty.
Yeah, no, this was great. Many people commented about how they were so impressed with your father, and it was so nice that you're sharing.
In the United States, he accomplished what he wanted. Why did he go to the South? Because he said he wants to be a peddler. I hope you know what a peddler is. Mm-hmm. And he became a peddler. And how he got his job he was 55 years old, no language, and doesn't work Shabbos. But he got a job working on his own because he was a quality man. He was a great salesman, and he became a peddler. And he became a peddler in New Orleans. When my sister and I got married, moved to New York, he stayed on many years. And when they moved back here, they moved to Borough Park. And when they used to come, most of my friends know my parents, and they always in awe at my father. What a smart, quietly, he's smart. What a smart man. Yeah, he foresaw. He was lucky. Let's face it, I'm going to say what my father said. Somebody had to make it.
Well, we're grateful it was you.
Thank you. So am I. Trust me. Thank you for having me, wanting me.
Oh, please. Well,
And
Toby,
you need
thank
more
you.
coverage, you can always ask me on the internet, I'll answer. But I think I gave you a lot.
You did. And we so appreciate you sharing your experience with us.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's
would have
very
liked to
difficult.
I would have liked to get involved a little bit about anti-Semitism, that the Jews here should understand it more. But I don't like getting involved in something that I don't see the people, because I don't know the reaction of them.
I understand that. Yep. I'm sure, it's really difficult for many of us to even imagine, the fear and trauma you endured as a
You
child.
have to be aware.
Yep.
I
Well,
want
and
every Jew to be aware.
Mhm.
It's not normal time in the United States. Here.
Mhm.
Not. The world, forget about it, the world. So even here, you have to be alert and aware. You have to be able to add the dots. You can't allow a lie to continue. If somebody tells a lie and you don't catch him, then becomes a truth.
Mhm.
Then becomes a truth. I always tell the children, when you read an article, make sure it's the truth. Make sure you know who wrote it. Make sure it comes out.
It's a very good
Thank
point.
you. Thank you
Yeah.
for letting me say.
Well, of course. Yeah. We're truly honored to hear a firsthand account from you as a Holocaust survivor, because we are aware that, this is really the last generation to be able to receive this
I'm
gift.
just about the last one, yes.
Yeah.
There were very few in my age. There were
Mhm.
older ones, but they all got, every day I hear somebody, even between my own friends, 3 of my friends are not able to, they're here, but they're not able.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, now we know you've educated us, and it's our responsibility now to, learn from your experience.
Make sure you tell your children
Mhm.
what to be aware, how to, when they go to school. A lot of when I speak to children, college kids, they ask me, I'm going to college, what shall I be aware? I said, make sure that but it's not an easy job. You need more than just the Jews. I think you need the non-Jews to be part to help.
Yep.
Jews alone cannot do the job.
Right. Now you need allies. Well, it's really, after hearing you, it's our responsibility to learn, from the past and make sure another Holocaust never happens again. So we truly thank you for.
It's usually might not be the same, but a little bit shaped differently, which I'm scared of.
Yeah.
How many people did you have?
Well, we still have, there's hundreds of people on here.
I see still 210 people.
Yeah, there's a lot. And we're also on our YouTube channel, and there's a bunch of people over there as well.
Oh, wow.
But I really, we're just so grateful for you
Thank you
joining
for
us.
having me. It's my pleasure. I mean, not my pleasure, it's my job.
Well,
I want to do it. No, I do. I want to. How would you know? How would you? Only from reading, but it's a different from reading, and it's different from seeing a person. I was there.
Mhm.
I'm here. I'm the witness.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great Purim.
I'm sorry?
Happy Purim.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we just made hamantashen today.
I made it didn't come out nice.
Oh, well, as long as they taste good, it's fine.
I don't know. Not so great. I was baking for the kids, but I'm not sure they came out right.
Oh, so nice.
I'm not doing it again.
Well, I also just wanted to put out a couple thank yous out to Pinebrook Jewish Center and the Chabad of Montville for co-sponsoring the program. And thank you to, as you mentioned, the Museum of Jewish Heritage for putting us in touch with you, Toby. In addition, I just want to, truly thank the people who worked behind the scenes to making this evening happen. We have a great communications team of Sue Marinello, Alex Shalingo, Melissa Beno, and Bunsari Shaw for publicizing the event. And we have some great, our Montville Township Public Schools really encouraged our students to attend. So we appreciate that. And a special thank you.
If the schools ask you if they want, I'd be delighted to do it. Schools anytime.
Perfect. Well, I will definitely share your name. I will share your name. And also a special thank you to Michael Shalingo for being our Zoom expert and sort of the man behind our tech curtain. So if you want to learn more about Toby, you could definitely get in touch with us and we can connect you. Or if you want to learn more about One Montville, check out our website and our social media. But really, thank you everyone for joining us today or this evening, and have a good night.
Good night and thank you. Thank you. All be well. You're almost there. Almost there. Almost.
Yes, well, stay healthy and enjoy your weekend with your family.
Thank you. You too. Now I'm only going for a few hours.
Well, that's good. All right. Well, have a good week. That's good.
Okay. Bye-bye.